And we are back, folks, for Special Projects Pack number 10, returning for February, of course. This is now 100 cars that I've released in these Special Projects packs alone. That's just in the main ones, of course, not counting any of the individual cars. And of course, as you'll have seen if you watched the teaser trailer yesterday, this is one of the vehicles which I just had to do. It is, of course, a fictional car, technically. I've called it the Toyota GR Project Alpha, which of course is a play on the Alphard name, and Toyota does have a bit of a history with renaming cars in a fun way, like the I Go Crazy that they made years ago, so I thought it seemed kind of appropriate. And of course, this one is a bit of an homage to the Renault Espace F1 with that Lexus LFA engine swap. Of course, you will need to do that swap. As I'll have put on screen, you do want to slap the design from this particular player on it from the description if you want to go for the exact look that I've got. Of course, you could go for any visual look, but this one to me just kind of looked the part. I like the body kit on it, I like the visuals that they've got going on. It looks pretty convincing for that kind of Espace F1, or even more so you could say like Ford Supervan kind of vibe to it. So as far as the actual parts, of course, you want to drop as much weight as possible out of this thing. It comes with comfort mediums, but we have changed those, of course. As far as the sports section, we've got the high lift cams and the high compression pistons, stage 2 weight. I've got the power restrictor and the ballast, just for if you ever do need it. We're not actually using it this time around. As far as the semi-racing stuff, we've got the racing crank, the fully customised computer, of course the diff, stage 3 weight as well. I've opted to not change the body rigidity on this one, it's not entirely necessary. As far as the racing stuff, we've got the polished ports, balance tuning, stroked out engine, the filter silencer, manifold, pads and discs. Doesn't really matter which discs you go for. You could go for the carbon ceramics, you could go for the drilled, you could go for the slotted. It really doesn't matter. They will give you roughly the same kind of performance. Of course, you do want the torque vectoring center diff, with it being a four-wheel drive car. You've got the race clutch and flywheel, race suspension, race transmission, and I've opted for racing hard tyres. If you really want to go above and beyond, you could put it on softs, just to make it even more like an Espace F1, but I've got it on hard so it's a bit more usable and maybe a bit more realistic, and it's already pretty fantastic through corners. The steering angle adapter, of course it's usually for drifting, but it definitely helps out with the turn-in, especially on a bigger vehicle. I've opted for the hydraulic handbrake as well. You don't really need that, but it's just for manoeuvrability. And then for the ultimate section, I've got the high lift cams, which I believe actually cancels out the earlier one, if I recall correctly. We've got the titanium connecting rods and pistons and the carbon prop. So in other words, kind of just fully upgrade the engine to over 700 horsepower, drop the weight as much as you can, and fit everything to the highest racing spec which you can find. Now, as far as the actual tuning side of things, this is, for those who will remember, actually an evolution of a build which I already did. I did a track version of the Alphard already with a different GR racing livery on it. It was one of my standalone Special Projects builds, and this one is, as I said, an evolution of that, taking it even further with that Lexus engine. This has got, what, 150, 200 horsepower more, something like that, and a pretty huge difference in performance as well. So as far as the suspension, we've got 115mm. Usually going that low on a car ends up with it bouncing around too much or bottoming out. In the case of this one, it actually rides pretty well in conjunction with the fairly stiff springs that you can see here, but also the car itself actually is not scraping the ground anyway, because it is a larger vehicle. So we've got anti-roll on 6, 33 and 42 for the dampers, 2.95 on the springs, like I said, so pretty stiff. As far as the camber, we've got 3 degrees. Then for the toe, I've towed in 10 on the rear, towed out 10 on the front. As far as the diff, we've got 10 and 10, then 20 and 30, and 10 and 20. Then a 50-50 split is what I've opted for. Of course, with it being more of a track vehicle, you could drop that down to like a 30-70 and give that a try. Maybe even go down to like a 10-90 if you want it to be even more like the Renault. But if you've got four-wheel drive, you may as well use it to your advantage. I'd recommend trying what I've done here first, and then if you want to make some adjustments, of course you can. As far as the gearing, it's a fairly long ratio car, so it does work its way up through second and third or in a much more long way than you'd expect. It doesn't fly through the gears like the Espace, but that's mostly so that you can still use it on more open circuits as well and not fall behind. So if you wanted to take that down to like 280, 270 just to make it a bit quicker shifting, then of course you could. It depends on the track. There's no ballast, no power adjustment, no ECU adjustment. The downforce I've set the highest. Of course, for increased grip. And then over here, it's simple enough because you can just see everything we've fitted. And as it turns out, it sits at less than 700 points, even with those racing hard tyres. So you could potentially, I haven't done this yet, but you could potentially try it out as a cash cow build at Le Mans for the 700 point level. So give it a try if you want to for that. But of course, speaking of trying it out, all that remains is to jump out to a circuit and show you what this can actually do in practice. Now, simply put, I love this thing. It's not an Espace F1, of course, but in spirit, it's pretty damn close. The engine is great. It's not as powerful, it's not as light, and it's certainly not as quick. But I love that it even gets close to having that kind of nostalgia. And even though it's a fictional build, Toyota has done crazy stuff in the past, so it's not too outside of the realm of believability. Of course, in real life, if they were to do something like this, it would not have the V10 engine, it would probably have some form of like V6 or V8 racing engine, if they were to do that. But still, it's the engine swap that we've got, and of course it sounds fantastic. The handling on this thing, the corner control it's sublime. It's such a pleasure to work with. The first thing I did with this when I first built it was take it straight out to Suzuka. I did like a 2-minute 4, 2-minute 5 lap, which of course I'm sure plenty of other players could go quicker, but I was really impressed immediately by how quick this was, especially bearing in mind it's still a 1500 kilo minivan, which is pretty damn impressive. So if you do decide to use this opening build for Special Projects Pack number 10, of course, I hope you have a ton of fun with it. If you were already a fan of the car, then I think you will like it, and naturally stick around for more builds over this coming week for Special Projects Pack number 10. And of course, I'll see you next time with more. But for now, thanks for watching.